It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. I had just bought a cozy little cottage, a peaceful spot I'd been dreaming about for years. Nestled at the edge of a quiet neighborhood, it felt like a fresh start, a place where I could finally breathe. I pulled up with my moving truck, ready to unpack boxes and settle into my new life. But just as I was hauling my first lamp inside, I saw her arms crossed, phone already in hand. Marching toward me like she owned the street, she didn't introduce herself. No welcome to the neighborhood. Instead, she started snapping photos of my license plate and demanding to know if I had permission to move in. I had barely turned the key in my front door when she called the cops. Her name. Let's just say the neighbors call her Karen, and she's the self-declared queen of the HOA. The thing is, I had done everything by the book. I legally bought the home, paid my dues, and followed every rule. But that didn't matter to her. She claimed my moving truck was blocking community access and accused me of bringing down property values before I even unpacked. When the officers showed up, they were as confused as I was. I showed them the paperwork. They left with a shrug, but Karen didn't. She kept coming back. Notes on my door, complaints about my garden hose, emails to the HOA board about unauthorized curtains. It was nonstop. I tried to keep my cool. I tried to stay polite. But when I discovered how far she had really gone digging through public records, making up violations, and bullying other neighbors, I knew it was time to do something. What she didn't realize was that I had a little background in law and a big surprise waiting for her. So Yashi called the cops while I was moving into my cottage, but by the time I was done, I terminated her HOA. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. I didn't move into the cottage looking for trouble. Honestly, I just wanted some peace. After years of living in loud apartments and dealing with landlords who barely fixed anything, this little home was my escape. The yard needed some work, sure, but I saw the charm under the weeds. It was a fixer-upper, but it was mine. I was ready to make it into something beautiful till Karen decided I didn't belong. I started asking around the neighborhood, just trying to get a feel for who she really was. Turns out I wasn't the only one who had run-ins with her. Several neighbors warned me quietly, almost like they were afraid that she'd been running the HOA like her own personal kingdom for years. Complaints about porch decorations, kids' bikes left out, even what color you could paint your front door. She had rules for everything, and if you pushed back, she made your life difficult. The weirdest part, no one could really explain how. She got that much power. She wasn't elected recently. No one remembered voting. It was like she had just taken over, and people stopped resisting because it was easier to let her have her way. The HOA meetings were barely attended anymore, and a lot of the board members had either moved out or just gave up. That's when things started to feel off. One day, I came home and found a warning notice taped to my door, something about my mailbox being non-compliant. It looked official, but there was no letterhead, no contact info. Just a scribbled signature that looked suspiciously like Karen's. Then came the fines. Small ones, at first $20 here, $50 there, but they added up fast. I checked my mailbox every day like I was waiting for a bad grade. The more I looked into it, the stranger it got. The HOA's contact info led to a P.O. box in a neighboring town. The supposed property management company didn't even have a working website. I started digging through public records, and what I found. That's when I realized this wasn't just about a nosy neighbor with too much free time. Karen had built something much bigger than that. I couldn't shake the feeling that this whole HOA situation was way more messed up than anyone realized. At first, I thought Karen was just being controlling, maybe even bored. But once I started connecting the dots, it felt like she had turned the HOA into her own personal business. And the worst part? No one had questioned it, at least not in a long time. I found a neighbor named Paul who had lived there for over 10 years. He used to be on the original HOA board. We had coffee one morning, and he told me, straight up, that something fishy happened a few years back. There was a sudden change in leadership, some quiet shuffling of bylaws, and next thing they knew, Karen had appointed herself as the president. She rewrote voting procedures, canceled open meetings, and somehow gained control over the HOA bank account. She bullied anyone who pushed back, he said. People got tired. Some even moved out. I asked him why no one reported it. He just shrugged. We didn't think we could prove anything. And most folks just want to keep their heads down. But I couldn't do that. Especially not when Karen started sending me letters about unauthorized landscaping because I trimmed the hedges. Or when she threatened to fine me over $200 for having guests park on the street during my housewarming. That one really lit a fire in me. I had friends over for a single evening, and suddenly I was creating a disturbance. At this point, I started documenting everything, every notice, every letter, even video clips from my doorbell cam when she'd come snooping around. I requested financial records from the HOA as a member. I was legally entitled to see them, but I got no reply. Not even a denial. Just silence. That's when the real paranoia kicked in. I noticed my mail going missing. A neighbor hinted that Karen had access to some of the old HOA keys, including the ones for the community mailboxes. It felt like I was being watched, harassed in slow motion. Something was definitely wrong here. And I was getting closer to the truth. I knew I was getting close when the tone of everything around me started to change. Karen wasn't just dropping notes on my door anymore. She started calling out to me from across the street. Loud enough for the neighbors to hear. You think you're smarter than everyone, huh? She yelled one morning while I was watering the plants. I didn't even respond. I just kept recording everything. At this point, I had stacks of evidence phone. Violation letters, vague fines, neighbors' testimonies, and enough inconsistencies in the HOA paperwork to raise real questions. But it was one particular document that nearly stopped me in my tracks. A fake signature on an old HOA vote sheet. Someone had signed as if they were my cottage's previous owner. But I had met the guy during closing. That wasn't his handwriting. It looked almost like Karen's, so I went digging deeper. I drove to the county clerk's office and started pulling public records on the HOA's incorporation, tax filings, and amendments. And that's when I saw the HOA's nonprofit status had actually lapsed 2 years ago. That meant all these fines, all these threats, weren't even backed by a legal organization anymore. Karen had kept everything going under the radar, counting on fear and confusion to keep everyone quiet. But even with that knowledge, I felt stuck. What was I supposed to do? Go door to door and rally neighbors who had been silent for years? File a lawsuit and wait for months while Karen kept up the harassment? Then, one night, I caught her on camera. It was 2:14 a.m. She was standing at my gate, flashlight in hand, peeking through the windows. I didn't know what she was looking for, but she was holding what looked like a clipboard and whispering into her phone. That was the final piece I needed. It was no longer just about HOA drama. This had crossed a line. The next morning, I didn't just wake up ready. I was done waiting, because now I had the proof. I had the law on my side, and Karen had no idea what was coming. Just when I thought I had all the cards in my hand, something unexpected flipped the whole thing upside down. That morning, I planned to file a formal complaint with the State Attorney General's office and hand over everything I'd collected, but before I could even grab my folder, I got a knock at the door. It wasn't Karen, it was a man in a suit holding a clipboard and flashing a fake friendly smile. He said he was from Community Compliance Services, some third-party group supposedly contracted by the HOA to handle ongoing violations. The name wasn't familiar, and when I asked for ID, He hesitated, then quickly handed me a wrinkled business card that looked like it had been printed at home. My gut told me something was off. He said he was there to do a property inspection, which made no sense because I hadn't requested anything, and the HOA had never announced one. I told him politely he wasn't allowed on the property without a warrant or proper notice. His smile faded. He left without argument, but something about it didn't sit right with me. Later that afternoon, I started digging into community compliance services. Nothing came up on my website. No business license. No official records. But then I found something else. The same name had been used in a few other neighborhoods across the state, each tied to complaints of fake violations, aggressive fines, and you guessed, HOA abuse. In one case, a homeowner even lost their home due to a lien placed through one of these phony inspections. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just Karen acting alone. She had built something bigger, maybe even worked with others doing the same scam across different neighborhoods. What looked like a local nuisance could actually be part of a pattern, something coordinated. Maybe she wasn't at the top of the food chain after all. Now it wasn't just about saving my own home. It felt like I was exposing a system that had been hurting people for years, and if I was right, taking due.